Hi there, and welcome back to the CKM Red Rugby League channel. It has been a hot minute since we've been back, but Rugby League is back, much to the dismay of girlfriends up and down the country. Joining me this week is a new face. We're going to be seeing a lot more of him as he helps me go through all the Super League games. It is the fantastic Stephen from the Drop Goal podcast. How you going, mate?
Doing absolutely brilliant, mate. Cheers for having me on the show. Really looking forward to jumping on and let's see what's in store for the partnership between the Drop Goal podcast and CKM Red. Honestly, really looking forward to this year in Super League. A lot of top teams fighting for that Super League Grand Final and Challenge Cup victory. So let's jump straight into it, mate. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot going on around the game to be excited about. Fantasy Super League's back as well.
Yeah.
People very excited for that. We do have our own Fantasy Super League, so go check that out as well. My wonderful girlfriend has took the title of best team name with Ruck Till You Scrum. So thank you for demonetizing my channel, Gemma. I really appreciate that. But
yeah, well. She'll have to be looking out for that in the future, mate. That is out of order, pal. I'd be putting my foot down if I were you.
I don't have a foot to put down, but we'll get straight in to the Rugby League. Tonight's game, little under an hour away now. It is the grand final showdown, the rematch. Catalan's back with a vengeance, taking on St. Helens. You've got some of the key facts and stats going across the bottom. What a game this is going to be. You've got Lewis, you've got plenty of storylines in here. Lewis Dodd, given the 7 shirt, relatively inexperienced. Partners, yeah. Johnny Lomax in the halves.
Yeah, honestly, this is, for me, the biggest game of round one. And for everyone watching, I think you'll agree, the biggest game. It is the two best teams in Super League facing off. Potential title clash early on, maybe. What are your thoughts on that? Are they still top teams coming into this year?
Definitely more so Catalan at the minute with their recruits. Yeah. Mitchell Pearce stepping up into that very important half-back role, partnering Josh Drinkwater. Dylan Napa, that was a bit of a shock coming out of nowhere, out of favour at the Bulldogs, came across. He's a firebrand, he's a powerful forward. Tyrone May, obviously, looking for a bit of a redemption arc, not the last player that we'll ever see come to British shores, trying to rekindle his career after controversy.
Yeah, honestly, mate, I think that the talking points for this game outshine almost every other game. I mean, if we look at the bottom now, these two clubs just 7.25 points. These games clearly close games. For me, these two teams have really stepped up the level of Super League last year, especially. Obviously, we know St. Helens had that dominance for 3 years or so. But Catalans, I think they went undercover. 2018 Challenge Cup, and now look at them. They're at the top of Super League. And I think that is what we need, especially to grow the game. I mean, that French team at the top, that'll attract many TV deals. And as we know, that has attracted a TV deal for Catalans. Do you think with Mitchell Pearce coming in, do you think he can fill those boots of James Maloney?
I think he's got a hell of a job. Maloney did an incredible bit of work with that Catalan side, bringing him up to speed. Everyone talked about the fact that he was to have around. He was so good for morale. Anyone that's been around the game knows that James Maloney is a bit of a pest in camp. Yeah. He's a great laugh to have, but the work that he does off the pitch, bringing up some of those young players. I mean, just the fact that you've got the experience of someone like James Maloney to bring up your under 19s, your under 18s, your under 17s, work with those halves. He's going to be able to impart wisdom on them that very few players in the game currently would be able to.
Yeah, mate, I agree. I mean, he's a serial winner as well. What hasn't he won? I mean, I did predict Catalans to win the to win the grand final, if I'm being honest, just because of what James Maloney has achieved in his career. I mean, he's done everything in Australia. He's come over to the UK and absolutely torn it apart with Catalans, and he's kind of brung a new era to Catalans almost. He's kind of changed what we think of Catalans. When they first came in, they kind of they were excluded from relegation so they could build their feet. But now relegation is far away from them. and they're looking at winning multiple grand finals in the next 5 years or so if they keep it up. Challenge Cups, all of that is on the horizon for Catalans. So I think what James Maloney has done is really bring that winning culture to Catalans, as we saw last year with the form they went on. And whether Mitchell Pearce can almost fill those boots is a tough one to call, but whether he creates his own role, different to James Maloney, we'll have to wait and see for tonight. Obviously, he's expected to debut alongside Dylan Napa and Tyrone May. So we'll have a look at that. But I'm really interested in what Mitchell Pearce can do, because I think you'll agree he'll be leading that halfback role this year and kind of leading Catalans as a squad and, controlling that mid area. So, it's an interesting one to talk about, I think.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the fence, you got Lewis Dodd, very much a player at the start of his career. All eyes will be on him. I mean, Will Hopewart is likely to start in that 3 role that was occupied by Kevin Nagama last season. Can switch into the spine, can play a ball running role if he needs to. Conrad Hurrell, named as well in the 19. Could come into the centre. We know that he's potentially going to play a lot of second row this season, but he's looking fitter than ever. But having someone with the experience of Hopewart there who can potentially switch into there, or even move Wellesby into the 6 role. We saw Wellesby and Coote alternating in and out of that spine. So how St. Helens adapt based on how the first 20 minutes of this game plays out is going to be interesting to see, and that's a storyline in itself. But I mean, we look at Saints. They've not lost a season opener since 2013. That is a stark job for the Catalans Dragons to come in and try and take off them.
Yeah, and it's a tough one to call, really. Which team will come out on top, we don't know, because of just the quality. I can't speak about it much, too much. The quality of Saints in Catalans is, in my opinion, just far beyond that of any other Super League team. Obviously, we'll get onto the other teams shortly, but these 2 teams fighting at the top of the table, and the turnaround in that Saints squad, especially, they've lost key players, especially in that halves area. And Kevin Nagama as well. For me, most underrated player in Super League. I loved him. I would have loved him to come to Warrington. Just as a Warrington fan myself, I think he's brilliant. But obviously, he's gone to Sydney Roosters. Obviously back in the NRL, but the switch round in that Saints squad, because over the last few years it's pretty much been the same squad. So how they adapt with a few new players in and around the team is really interesting to see. And I think the first 20 minutes is all to fight for in this game, like you said.
Okay, if I was to push you for a prediction one way or another.
Oh, it's a tough one. I don't think I could give you a score just because of how close the game is, but I think just because, like you said, they haven't lost an opening game since 2013, I think the Saints might just edge it, but it'd be a close game.
Yeah, I join you on that line of thinking. I'm feeling St. Helens 1-12 there, and we'll get off that game and we'll move on to the next game of the round. It is Hull KR and Wigan. Hull KR surprisingly beaten Wigan in their last 3 meetings, all with a margin of 10 points or better, which is surprising considering that we know the pedigree of this Wigan Warriors side. Yeah,
very surprising. But I think it's the Tony Smith rugby, really. That attacking, that flair rugby, not being afraid to take the chances and being the entertainers of Super League, I would say. Quite like Warrington were and Leeds were and every other team were that Tony Smith has coached. He's always brung that attacking flair. And I think he's done it really well with Hull KR. I think he's fell back in love with the game. And it is interesting to see the rise of Hull KR and almost the demise of Wigan. I mean, you'll have to agree, the last few years, they haven't really been in that top form that they usually are.
No, I definitely agree. And, with some of the off-season problems that they had, Bevan French looking at an NRL move, moving closer to home. Still not back. Jay Field will get the first crack at the fullback role. Zach Hardacre handed in a transfer request. Thomas Luluai reportedly into his last season of Super League as well. It's a big season for Wigan. I think that they could be potentially on the verge of a complete rebuild here. And they're not the same Wigan side that really drilled fear into sides years ago. You look down their roster, they've still got quality, they've still got good players, they've recruited well in Cade Ellis and Patrick Margot, who've also been named and will potentially make their debuts. but they come up against very tough, very hardened players in Sean Kenny Dowell on the edges, Ryan Hall, who's no doubt due for a huge season again, Kane Lynette, who was one of the premier players on the edge for Hull KR.
Yeah. Honestly, it's a tough one for Wigan for the first game as well. And if I said that a few years ago to you, mate, your reaction, you would have been, you just wouldn't believe it. Wigan having a tough game against Hull Kingston Rovers for the opening. You would have thought a few years ago Wigan would blaze past Hull KR. But how the tables have turned in the last few years is outstanding. And I think especially Sean Kenny Dowell, he's so experienced and bringing that to Hull KR. So when he first came in, he got awarded that captaincy, and KR fans were like, well, what's he done to deserve this? But last year, he did lead that team, and they did exceed everyone's expectations. I mean, I had them fighting for relegation just above Lee and then around Wakefield and Salford, which I'm sure you would have had them in the same area because no one knew what to expect. But now this team with Hull KR, the try scoring from Ryan Hall, Sean Kenny Dowell, one of my favourites at Hull KR. I think the bond that they've got with Tony Smith really helps them build a gelling team. In the rugby they play, mate, you've got to agree, it is entertaining stuff.
It is. They've got this. If you were to compare them to a football team, you'd have to put them around there with your scrappy likes of the teams like Leicester, who they'll catch you on the bounce, they'll hit you fast, they'll take you from wherever. And Hull KR will drag you into deep water. If you go into that game with a complacent attitude, their sheer work ethic and will to beat you will grind you down. And this Wigan side have got a tough job trying to stay on top of a Hull KR side who, you know, like they want to prove that it's not second year syndrome. They want to make sure that it's not a case of that it were a one season and done, and that Tony Smith is one of the premier coaches in the competition. There's not a lot of coaches that could have come in with the job that Tony Smith's had to do and do such a fantastic job. You know, Wigan signed off on a sour note last year, and now Adrian Lama's departed the club and everything else that's been going on. But they've got a bright future. They've got a good crop of youngsters coming through. They've always got a strong academy, but I think it could be time for Wigan to hit a little bit of a holding pattern, go through a little bit of a rebuild. And I think 2022 could be the season to do that. And they'll still make the 8. They've still got the quality there to make the 8. But I'm just have this feeling that Wigan won't be near the 4 this year.
Yeah, 100% agreed, mate. And new head coach Matt Peach, what do we expect from him? We aren't sure yet. But I think the culture in the club, they're trying to build back that old Wigan, that fearsome, that warrior side, hence the name, that just broke you down, played gritty rugby. And obviously the last few years, it's not been up to scratch. But with the addition of Lee Braze, that assistant coach was Sean O'Loughlin. Sean O'Loughlin, obviously legend at Wigan. And then Lee Braze, I think he'll be really helping Wigan and their kicking game because it's not been up to scratch at all recently. And obviously Harry Smith in the halves, he'll have a lot to learn from Lee. Obviously Sean Wayne's now got a role at Wigan again. So what they are trying to build, like you said, they're trying to build a new Wigan, but also, put that fear, the same fear that they used to have into those clubs. But I do think 2022 is a rebuilding year, like you said, and I don't think they'll be up there with the best of the best this year.
Yeah, and if I'm going to jump in, I'm going to say Hull KR win this one, on a 12.
Yeah, that's it, mate. I agree with you, and I think the attacking rugby that KR play, it could be by a lot, to be honest. If Wigan come into the game with the wrong attitude, thinking, "Oh, we'll breeze past it," so they've got to be careful. But yeah, definitely a Rovers win, if you ask me.
Yeah, and from one rebuild to another, it's Castleford. The Tigers have recruited heavily through the course of 2021 into 2022. Jake Truman expected to make his return from injury as well, which is going to really bolster the Tigers' chances against a Salford side that have also recruited really well. I mean, you see it going across the bottom there. 7 new signings: Jake Mamo, Westerman, Fanua, Ferry Amo, all named, all some of Lee Radford's favourite sons over at Hull FC.
Yeah. Honestly, I do think this rebuild it could be better than Wigan's, to be honest, just because Lee Radford, I love him as a coach, and we know what to expect from him, and the rugby he can produce out of a team. And the 7 new signings, I think Jake Mamo, what a signing. He was a threat last year, and I think him coming into form last year and now being given that starting role at Cass alongside Jake Truman making his return. He lit up Super League when he weren't injured last year. Obviously, he's still young. He can develop this year, and I think everything that Lee Radford can bring to that Castleford side alongside the new signings, I think if done properly, could gel really well, and we could be in for an interesting Castleford side this year.
Yeah, I mean the Castleford Tigers it is a complete rebuild. You know, they've farewelled some players and brought in some new faces. You know, Oliver Holmes and Peter Matautier, two real standouts, both going to your side of the Pennines in Warrington and making waves over there from reports out of training. But this Castleford side, Lee Radford, again, hard worker, instills it in his team. Didn't maybe get the time that he could have needed at Hull FC. Injuries definitely blighted and really ruined parts of his win percentage. But with a full season at Castleford and a good pre-season behind him as well, could potentially be a threat this year.
Yeah, I think so too, mate. And in terms of Salford, I don't expect too much from them, unfortunately, this year, which is a shame, considering their 2019 season. I mean, what a story that is! It's like Leicester winning the Premier League. That's it, they almost got there, Salford. They've signed quite a few decent players. I think Sisileti Akwala, big player. If he can put in the minutes, he'll be a big presence on the pitch. I think what Salford are trying to build is a team to survive relegation. To be honest, I don't think they're aiming for more than that. I think they want to build a team to survive relegation this year, shock a few teams, and then I think next year is their year to rebuild. To be honest,
I'm expecting a strong season out of Brodie Croft. I think that Salford fans have got expectations of him coming across, being another Jackson Hastings, being another player who asserts himself as a leader, takes the reins at the club, mans the helm, and really battens things down. I mean, Salford, let's be honest, they've recruited really well.
They
Matt Steed, huge signing, back to where he all started.
Yeah.
Tim Laffey, he's been without a club for a little while now. 30 years old. He's certainly not past it. Shane Wright was a regular at the North Queensland Cowboys. King Bunny Yawa signed for cash from Leeds. Those are all some strong signings. It's just about getting them to play well. They're good individual players and they're serviceable individual players. I mean, of all those signings, I'd say probably your weak link is the man at the back in Ryan Braley. I think that he's not really hit his stride in Super League, unfortunately, which is shocking for the promise that he showed while he was playing with Lee.
Yeah, but I think so too, mate. The signings they have made, it's extraordinary for Salford, I think, to put it into words. I mean, a year they had last year, Rich Marshall didn't really get off to where he wanted to go with Salford, and obviously they were probably, no offense to any Salford fans listening, and I do love Salford as a club, but they weren't Super League standard last year, I don't think. I think if they were in the Championship, I think you have the teams like Feather Rovers or Toulouse of last year that could put up a game against Salford, which is sad for Salford. But the recruits they've got, some good signings, Brodie Croft especially, I think, like you mentioned, if he comes over, and as the Salford fans think, almost replace Jackson Hastings because they never replaced him. Mark Sneed, reliable. Hull FC fans loved him. Obviously, a few mistakes here and there, but going back to where it started at Salford, top signing. And I think the difference this year is Salford have always had a squad that the expectations weren't high, but they played well and they shocked teams. Whereas this year they've got a much better squad. But will it be vice versa? Will they have a squad that doesn't perform up to standards? We don't know. We'll have to see. But this game is interesting. Obviously, I think for Salford, like I mentioned before, I think next year's their year to build on. I think this year they've just kind of got to focus and win those gritty games at the bottom to make sure they don't go down, personally.
Yeah. I'm going to jump straight on the Tigers winning this one. As much as being a Leeds fan, it pains to say me that Castleford will win a game, but the Tigers have got this one wrapped up for me. I think it's going to take a couple of weeks for this Salford side to really gel and really hit their rhythm. But I think when they do on their day, they'll be a real problem team. They're going to cause some upsets. They're going to get some big wins here and there, but it's just too early for me to be able to say with any confidence that Salford are in a position to beat a team like Castleford right now.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think although Castleford had their ups and downs last year, I think Salford just won't meet the standards that Castleford will put out on the pitch. And obviously, it might not be their day first round of Super League, but if Salford can build the squad they've got, obviously if all goes to plan, then yeah, they could shock a few teams this year. But yeah, definitely a Castleford win.
Okay, and now we're on to the game that will split me and you right down the middle and decide whether you're coming back next week or not.
It
is the Rhinos versus Warrington. It is the first game to hit Channel 4. What a momentous occasion. Adam Hills, of course, of the Warrington club, there to head up the broadcast team. It's going to be a great day for the game, regardless of the result, even though Leeds are going to clearly win this one.
Well, mate, I won't let my Warrington bias play in. I do think Leeds are the favourite for this game, which pains me to say because I'll be making the trip to Leeds on Saturday to that game. But it's a really tough one, really. Obviously, Darryl Powell coming in at Warrington. For me and a few other Warrington fans, which may be controversial, I think the squad may be a bit weaker than previous seasons just because Chris Hill, for me, I think the way he played last year, obviously, people were calling him to get rid of him a few years ago, but then last year he really stepped up. And I don't know if it was because he didn't have that pressure of captaincy or not, but he was almost that player that we've obviously seen from him many years ago. And Leeds Rhinos, brilliant signings. Obviously, Blake Austin's out, which is a shame because I'm sure he'd love to get a meat pie against us, no doubt. Because he was basically just booted out the door when Williams was announced. He kind of just, no time for you, Blake. We don't need you anymore. The Widdop-Williams partnership is interesting. Whether it'll work or not, we're not sure. Obviously, we saw Blake and Widdop kind of took a time to gel. But I do think in terms of player-wise, no doubt you'll agree. Obviously, you've got a brilliant partnership when Blake Austin comes back from suspension. Caesar and Austin will be a threat in the halves, no doubt. But I think that the talent of Widdop and Williams in the half, if gelled, is the best halfback pairing in Super League, personally.
Yeah, I think my round one halfback pairing is of grave concern to me right now. I mean, Leeds have options, obviously. With Walker being back fit, your obvious choice would be Walker into fullback, Myler into 6, Caesar at 7. Sutcliffe can play 6. You potentially then put Tom Briscoe into the centre. David Foster-Tua is going to play wing. And then it's just a case of then, again, moving pieces. Harry Newman is running on a late fitness test after he picked up a hamstring strain against Hull FC and Tom Briscoe's testimonial. Yeah. And James Bentley, as well named for the Rhinos, will likely debut. So, I mean, you've got Bentley, Mellor, Sutcliffe, Briscoe that can all play centre if you need to interchange. You've got Myler, Sutcliffe, Leaning that can all play half if need be, and then you put Dwyer in the 9. There's a lot of interchangeability, which I think is a luxury that Leeds have not had for a hot minute. But again, you need a good, solid, recognised spine when you come up against teams that will be there or thereabouts in the top 4. I mean, as you mentioned, Widdop and Williams work really well. Widdop is more of your standard second receiver, take a ball to the line, draw your defenders in player, whereas Williams is your unpredictable chip and chase running halfback that really causes teams problems. It's that classic half duo that really causes teams issues and really offers that air of unpredictability. But with Leeds, 2 aging fullbacks there in Caesar 30 at this point, Austin 31 going on 32.
I think so, yeah.
So it offers a little more predictability in the fact that that there's going to be a lot of line shifts, and I think Fussatua really excites me, seeing what he can do. So that monster hit on poor Davy Litton there. So it's interesting to see how this one plays out.
I think so too, mate. I think apart from the Saints Catalans game, I think this is going to be a really, really close game and one that is brilliant. How have Channel 4 managed to get there as their first game? I do not know, but honestly, if the viewing numbers are not sky high on this game, I'll be very, very confused actually, because as we've seen, the last few meetings between Leeds and Warrington have been fairly close, apart from I think it was 2020 when we came into that game and you absolutely stormed us. I think you put 50 past us almost, probably more, I don't know. But apart from that, the games between Leeds and Warrington over the years as well have always been really interesting games. Joe Bullock, Oliver Holmes and Peter Matautia to hopefully make their debut. Toby King out, top centre, I think, obviously rumoured last year to leave, but we managed to keep him on. I think he's probably coming into the year, if he was not out, probably the informed centre. And for fantasy Super League players, Toby King did wonders for me last year anyway. No doubt if you had him or anyone else listening, they would think the same. But really, mate, I can't call this game. It is a very, very close game. I think it's the best game Channel 4 could have chose. Adam Hills at commentary, you know, it's gonna be an interesting one for Channel 4. Top game, Adam Hills, maybe a bit of Warrington biasy, you never know. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this game, and I can't go against Warrington, unfortunately. As much as I'd love to be not biased and be as fair and neutral as possible for this show, I will have to say that I'm going to take Warrington to take the win just about, mate. But I'm sure you'll disagree.
Absolutely, I'll disagree. That is not from a place of bias. We're more than partial to a little bit of bias over here. Don't worry about that. But you know, it's going to be a very good game, as you mentioned, for all the points. It's going to be disappointing not to see Billy Magoulias out there. He's still out with an injury. But for me, I'm going to go. I can't look past the Rhinos. I'm going to go Leeds 1-12 here. I think it's going to be a tight affair. I think both teams are really going to give it each other, and it wouldn't surprise me if it's a low scoring affair at all.
Yeah, me neither, mate. I 100% agree. But another quick talking point just before we move on. Warrington have sold over 1,600 away tickets, which is the most to a Leeds away game since 2016, I believe. So the atmosphere as well at the stadium, I think, for round one, big following from Warrington. I'm sure Leeds will turn up in numbers. Really brilliant game atmosphere wise, and I think that's what drives players, and we've not had that the last few years due to COVID. So whether that drives either team more, we don't know. But yeah, top game, and we'll have to see how it pans out, mate.
Absolutely, and as you mentioned, we'll get on to yet another curious spectacle: Huddersfield versus Toulouse. I mean, we'll go over Toulouse first because they are. In the weeks running up to Super League, I mean, the excitement was very quickly building around them, and all of a sudden the wheels just seemed to come off. Jonathan Ford, who everyone's been calling for a Super League move for the longest time, very quickly departs the club. Matt Kerala, all of a sudden not named in the 19, rumours that he's going to be on his way out of the club as well due to the vaccination stance. They lose one of their star centres I've completely Matthew Jassam. It's just it's a struggle, and it's really bad to see for Toulouse.
It is. It's a shame, and I would love to see Toulouse stay in Super League this year, because what they can bring to the table in terms of expansion, I don't think was looked into enough compared to your Torontos and your far out teams. I think what Toulouse have been building over the years in the Championship, being a consistent top performer in the Championship, and really just missing out on the Super League spot most years in the playoff. I think what they were building was really promising and exciting, like you said. And the excitement was so big coming into Super League. Another French team, the Catalans Toulouse derby, would have been massive. And then all of a sudden, the wheels have fallen off. Like you said, it seems as if Toulouse is crumbling, players seem to be considering their future at the club. Obviously, there's many rumours going about that a lot of players are unhappy at Toulouse for some reason. Injury-wise, them Gadwin Springer, all these players coming across the bottom, it's really going to hurt them coming into Super League, especially for that round one. Huddersfield-wise, Will Price, wow, what a talent. I'm really looking forward to him. Chris Hill, ex-Warrington man, Theo Farge, Toulouse here, all of these players coming down the side. They've recruited very well. Luke Yates is captain, obviously. He deserved that, I think. But Will Price, I think, is the name you've got to look out for. He is a top talent for the future, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, all those names that you mentioned there, a fit and ready Toulouse here is a problem for any defence. Danny Levi, I thought was very unlucky not to get an NRL contract. How they've let him come to British shores is absolutely beyond me. Chris Hill, a couple of years ago, people were calling for his head, saying that he's past it, saying that it's time.
Yeah,
he's finally left Warrington, and now, as you mentioned, he's a player playing without pressure. He's still an England international. Yeah. He's still a big presence. He's still a leader. Theo Farge there to steer them around the park, and it surprises me to see Will Price go to full-back based on how he played at 6. But I do not doubt for 1 second that Will Price is going to be there to turn it on and be the entertainer once more this season. And Huddersfield, I tell you what, if they are not packing stadiums and rocking the rafters, the club needs to really assess things, because they have so much to be excited about this season. This is the most excited a Huddersfield side should be since they came so close to lifting the league leaders in 2013, I think it was, 2015?
Yeah, around that time, mate. I think that time period, 2009, 2013, when Huddersfield were at the top of their game, this is the most excited they've been able to be. I think coming into Super League, like he says, I mean, the last few years, fans-wise, I'm sorry to any Huddersfield out there, Huddersfield fans, sorry, but the stadium capacity and the amount of fans turning up, it's not on for me, I don't think. This year, Ian Watson, redemption season for Huddersfield, obviously didn't really meet expectations last year coming in. But this year, the signings they've made, Theo Farge especially, controlling that halfback area on the pitch. Top signing, he's done it for years at Saints. I think underlooked, almost Johnny Lomax kind of took the limelight, but I think Theo Farge, a top player. I think they've got everything in place to be maybe not a top team, but definitely in and around that top 6, top 5 area if they gel. But that's it, isn't it, mate? If they're consistent enough and if they gel. And we've seen that with many teams across Super League and over the years. Sometimes they just don't gel and expectations aren't met. Do you think personally that Huddersfield will have a better season than last year? Because the signings they've made, surely that's what's to come, right?
Absolutely. I think this is the statement of intent season for Huddersfield. I think that fans were calling for investment into the club for a long time. They've got it now. Look at the talent that you've got. It's up to you now. Vote with your feet. Get into the stands. Get behind your team. It is going to be a big season in Huddersfield. And this, if they build a platform to really propel themselves off this season, there's nothing to say that they can't start attracting bigger talent and people taking them more seriously as Super League contenders again, rather than this dormant sleeping giant, as it were, that we've been waiting to see a resurrection of for such a long time.
Yeah, no doubt, mate. I think the foundations they've got in place, the investment from the owners and the chairman's getting involved, and I think the atmosphere around the club is slowly rising. Like you said, from that team that were kind of the sleeping giants, people were expecting them to kind of wake up and shock people, but for years it just didn't happen, and they kind of stayed in and around the same position. But now it's time to build, mate. I think this year for Huddersfield and the next year and the years coming forward, fans have got to get in the stadiums, because that's what's doing it, mate. If the fans buy the tickets, that's the money, that's the income coming in, which can then, so let's be real, money talks in all sports. And if they've got the money to sign those top players from NRL or these upcoming Super League players or whoever they may go after in the near future, they've got to have the money for it, mate. And if the fans aren't buying the tickets, that's a huge amount of revenue not coming in for the club. But for me, Huddersfield, they've got to make the most of it this year, and no doubt for me that they'll beat Toulouse in a not so close game. Really, I think Giants will storm by personally.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've mentioned too many times there the fact that Toulouse are very much out on their feet. You're probably going to likely see Tony Gigot slotting at fullback where he was brought in
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
half. We're going to see, some aged talent from Super League past in Dom Peru, who, don't get me wrong, is still a very strong, very serviceable player, but he's not the same Dom Peru that was ripping up the edges for St. Helens through some of their most dominant time
yeah,
period.
yeah.
For me, this one's got Huddersfield 13 plus written all over it. And if Huddersfield don't go out and run amok here, it potentially puts a bit of a damp squib on what could be a very impressive season for Huddersfield. And the proof will be very much in game one for a lot of the fans and a lot of the skeptics.
Yeah, definitely, mate. I think it all comes down to game one for Huddersfield. Not so much Toulouse, just because of how unfortunate they've been. Obviously, they do have those aging players that were once top quality Super League players. Tony Gigo's an interesting one to look at. I think I really liked him when he was in Super League, but him coming into Toulouse now, not really being in and around the game the last few years, he's kind of been sat back a bit. And obviously not being in his preferred position. I do think it's not Toulouse's game to win. I don't think. I think if Huddersfield don't put a mighty score past them, it'll have fans questioning Ian Watson. To be honest, I think
Yep. And with that, then we arrive at our final game. It is Hull FC taking on Wakefield Trinity. Again, we don't have a great deal of information for this one just because teams are not released until a few days before the game. So we've got to do a little bit of guesswork here. From what we do know, Jamie Shaw will likely be in at the number 1 jersey with Jake Connor suffering a fractured hand. He will get a real chance to redeem himself and give Brett Hodgson some selection headaches. For Wakefield, we're going to see some of their new arrivals as well. Most importantly, we're going to see Tom Lynham, who I think has been their headline signing. He did great things at Warrington. He did great things here at Hull FC when he was a Hull FC player at the very start of his career. Now he gets to come back and haunt them. Tom Johnston, apparently fitter than ever as well.
Good news.
Yeah, Wakefield have some things that they could really worry Hull FC with.
Yeah, mate. I think for me, Wakefield Trinity are almost like Huddersfield were a few years ago. They had top players, but they're kind of not really performing up to the standards of those players. Obviously, they've shocked a few teams past season. For me, Mason Lino, if he gets that spot into that game, whether he gets injured in the coming days or not, but for me, he's such an important player in that Wakefield team. I really love his halfback play. I love everything about him. Tom Lynham, like you said, prolific try scorer, really. Bit of a bad attitude. So how Wakefield will handle that, I'm not sure. But the winger threats, especially with Tom Lynham and Johnston on the wings. We know Tom Johnston is one of the most acrobatic wingers in Super League. The finishing he can pull off for a Wakefield side, it is beyond me. He's almost like not a B-Tech Tom Makinson, but he's a Tom Makinson doing it at a Wakefield. I do love Tom Johnston, really. The winger threats for me are something to really look out for this year at Wakefield.
Yeah, and Wakefield, they've recruited through the middle as well. Liam Hood, ever since he came on the scene, I think he actually debuted against Wakefield all those years ago for Leeds.
Mm-hmm.
Prolific tackler, cuts people in half. He did it at the World Cup. He shocked people with his tackle technique. He's a tenacious player. He's not afraid of hard work, and he's there to cause problems in and around that ruck area. And that's what Wakefield have been needing. They've not really had that player since maybe the likes of Tyler Randall to come into the middle.
Yeah, mate. I do think it's a tough one, really, because with Wakefield, people have been saying, "Oh, they're going to go down. Toulouse they're gonna nick it and stuff." But I can't see Wakefield going down with the players they've got. And like you said, so that they're recruiting from Wakefield for the size of the club. No offense to anyone listening. they've pulled off some good signings, to be honest. I'm trying to build up words to explain it, but it's quite hard to explain what Wakefield have the quality of players they've got. Sometimes doesn't reflect on the pitch, but I think that's a perfect meeting for Hull FC because that's been them for the past however many years, mate. They've had top quality and it's never really looked and reflected on the pitch, and they've always been inconsistent. So what Brett Hodgson can get out of Hull FC this year, it's an important year for Hull FC, definitely. Jamie Shaw in the fullback role, he's not been in the game or in that starting position for about a year or just over, so that'll be interesting. I think this game, it's what would you say, a tale of inconsistent teams almost, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's teams that didn't fulfill their full potential for the ability that they do have. Hull FC, from the get-go, they're already riddled by injury. You've got Scott Taylor out long-term with foot tendon problems. You have Josh Bowden running on fitness tests. Manu Matu has reportedly picked up a hamstring strain. You've got players dropping before the season started. Jake Connor, of course, he is a mercurial player. He's wildly rocks and diamonds. He can score a hat-trick one week and get sent off the next. It's absolutely, you don't know which Jake Connor's going to show up, but when he does show up, he's a problem. Wakefield have exactly the same thing with the likes of Jacob Miller, who is a bit of a wild brand, can get in under people's skin. He's been there. He's been around the game for a long time. He's going to be an experienced head steering this Wakefield pack around that's recruited. You see Thomas Mins come back into Super League as well after a time away from the game. David Fafita there again, Fantasy's biggest point scorer last season. People have got their eye on him. His offload game, his ability to break tackles.
Yeah.
But again, starting to age, starting to wear. Wakefield need to really batten down the hatches if they're going to be taken seriously in Super League, and they need to start preparing for the future and backfilling some of those spots. Yeah,
no doubt, mate. It's clear to see that some of their top players are aging. I mean, Fafita, I used to speak to him quite a lot. No, not so much nowadays. It seems as if he's got rugby league in his head and playing GTA in his heart. So I would say, he's a top player, top bloke, and if he can inflict that damage that we know he can do this year, and the recruits that Wakefield have got. Mason Lino, I'll mention again. If he plays, I do love him to bits as a player. I think he's very underrated. It's an interesting one. I do think, though, Hull FC might just have the edge in this game, mate. What are your thoughts?
I am shockingly going to go for Wakefield in this one.
Right. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from, to be honest, mate. And it was tough to call. I did literally just switch in my head. I was just thinking with Brett Hodgson, the experience he's had as a player. Now he's coaching at Hull FC. I think he might just have something locked up in there that could tip out Wakefield, despite the injuries they've got coming into round one. But I see where you're coming from with that Wakefield win, to be honest, mate. It's a tough game to call, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be one of the toughest to call. I mean, Hull FC have won 4 of the last 5. Mm-hmm. The one Wakefield win was Hull FC's last game of the season, ironically, and Wakefield ran up a big score on them there. So, I mean, Willie Poaching is only just really starting to hit the forefront of his coaching career and really take off from there. And if he can get the best out of his players, it's going to be huge. It's going to be a massive thing, and everyone involved at Wakefield should be very optimistic for the future if they can carry through where they left off last season. But no, I think that will do us there. We are about 15 minutes away from the exciting return of Super League. It is St Helens versus Catalans. It is live on Sky Sports. All there is left to do is thank you for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, for coming along and helping us get through these games.
Oh, no worries, mate. I've really enjoyed this, mate. And what better feeling to end a brilliant live stream. What a chat about rugby league. Properly enjoyed that, mate. Top live stream and more to come. And what a feeling to end it with 15 minutes until the start of Super League 2022. Mate, as you can tell, I'm so excited for this year. I cannot wait.
Yeah, rugby league's definitely back. Everyone's got the bug. Make sure that you are tuning in live on Sky Sports for that game, and let us know your thoughts on any of the predictions we've given. And join us next week as we'll be going through all the round 2 games with a little bit of a round 1 review feel to it as well. But all that's left to do is thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week.
That's it, mate.